It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Breaking news, the teenager on top of the world. Luke the Nuke Littler wins the World Darts Championship at only his second attempt. Also on the programme tonight, weather warnings for snow and ice as police investigate whether icy roads caused a crash which killed a baby boy. Pressure on the NHS after a huge surge in patients in hospital with flu over the past month. Donald Trump faces a court appearance in New York next week, just days before being inaugurated as president. New Orleans attack, we hear from the brother of the man who ploughed his truck into a crowd of revelers.
This wasn't the man I knew. This wasn't the father, the son that I knew.
Not welcome, the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, says there's no place in his party for English Defence League co-founder Tommy Robinson. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30. Hello there, good evening. We begin with the breaking news tonight that the teenager, Luke the Nuke Littler, has won the World Darts Championship at only his second attempt. He beat Michael van Gerwen to become the youngest ever winner of the competition. Here's the winning leg.
Destiny to be world champ. Them all, aged just 17, to claim the biggest prize in the sport. And he has not just beaten Michael van Gerwen, he has beaten him well.
Yeah, just a superb effort, start to finish. Again, he just kept his nose out ahead of Michael van Gerwen, mirroring the tournament stats on averages right to the end. And Michael, no matter how much he struggled, couldn't find a way past the Littler timing. And
fantastic reactions there from Luke Littler. Well, Shaman Freeman-Powell joins us now live from Alexandra Palace. Ali Pally, as it's known, Shaman. His opponent certainly knew he had the home advantage tonight, and the home crowd delighted at this record-breaking win.
Absolutely. Luke Littler now becoming the youngest ever World Darts Championship. We've just witnessed the coronation of the new King of Darts. Luke Littler had the fans on his side tonight, facing Michael van Gerwen, a man who's already won this title 3 times. But it seems that Luke Littler was cool, calm and collected and has brought home the win, not only winning £500,000 in prize money, but also becoming the youngest ever to do it, also taking that title from Michael van Gerwen, who won it when he was 24 back in 2014. It's been an incredible evening here today at the Ali Pally. The crowds were erupting, singing "We're living in a Littler wonderland" throughout the course of today. And when the moment became clear that Luke Littler had won the World Darts Championship, he seemed very emotional. It seemed he couldn't quite believe it himself. At one point, breaking down of cheers of joy. It's been an incredible evening. He had already made history at 16 years old last year, making it to the final, the youngest to ever make it that far. Today, he is the youngest to ever become world champion. His life has already changed, moved his family out of a modest 2-bed flat after the amazing achievements of last year into a 5-bed mansion. Now, who knows what he's going to be doing with that £500,000 prize money. It's going to take a while for the news to sink in.
Yes, proudly holding aloft that Sid Waddell trophy, Shaman. We can hear the crowds behind you as they begin to leave. He said before tonight, winning would be the stuff that dreams are made of. Let's have a listen to after the game.
Wow, a final between 2 generational talents, and your darting destiny has been fulfilled. Luke Littler, the World Darts Champion. Just sum up your emotions for us.
I can't believe it. Honestly, I can't believe it. But We both played so well, and I've said in my interviews, and I needed to get off to a quick start tonight, and that's what I've done. But I knew Michael, he was behind me the whole game. Them cover shots, when he'd hit 2 trebles, I'd have to come back with 2 or 3. He was right behind me the whole way through.
And for how long has this been a dream of yours, Luke?
Everyone dreams of lifting this trophy, but you've got to get through a tough field even before qualifying. But yeah, I can't believe it.
And coming into this final, you had so much pressure on your shoulders, but from the outset in this final, you seemed to have your emotions under such great control, as well as everything you were throwing. Is that how it felt for you?
Yeah, Michael went to the dawn 2-1 at the end. As soon as he missed that 60 for 36, I knew I've got 3 in hand. Usually I don't go for double 16, so I just thought, just hit it now, otherwise Michael, he's going to come back at you. But it just, that first game against Ryan Meikle, I keep saying it, but it's the game that really mattered, and then throughout I've just settled.
And we know how much you love tops and tens. They were working exceptionally for you in that final.
Yeah, they were going well. I knew they had to. I was practicing backstage on the tops and tens. Like I said, then 32 at the end, I knew I had to hit it.
And did the feeling change at all as you approached the finish line?
2-0 up, I started getting nervous, but I just said to myself, just relax. Obviously, I was thrown for the match. I would have threw for the match either way, but to get it over and done with then was special.
Luke, congratulations. We'll bring you in for another chat in a moment, but a word.
Yes, a worthy winner there. Sales of dart sports we know have been surging, Shaman. They call it the Littler effect. Goodness knows what will happen now. But at 17 years old, what composure he showed tonight.
Absolutely, and this is what many who love the sport of darts will say. Everyone that made it to the semi-finals was more than capable of winning, but it's a game of the mind. It's about who can hold their nerve, who can drown out the crowds that may be cheering or booing and make it to the final and win tonight. It's an incredible achievement for Luke Littler. He's just 17 years old, such a young age to win such an extraordinary title. There seemed to be respect on both sides. They've both played each other before in the past, and they've both won and lost against each other to that as well. So tonight was always going to be close, but it seemed Luke Littler was the one that was able to take that title home.
Extraordinary scenes there. Shaman, live for us in Alexandra Palace. Thank you very much indeed, and congratulations from us, of course, to Luke Littler. Well, we move on to more breaking news, and a judge in New York has tonight ordered President-elect Donald Trump to be sentenced over his hush money case next Friday, 10 days before his inauguration. But the judge has indicated that he won't sentence Mr. Trump to time in jail for falsifying business records to commit election fraud. Let's find out more from our US correspondent, Martha Kellner. So what happened tonight then, Martha, and how extraordinary is it that he will have to appear virtually or in person for sentencing?
Completely extraordinary and unprecedented. This is a significant and striking development, Anna, in this case. As a reminder, this concerns Donald Trump's conviction from last year of 34 counts of falsifying business records. This relates to hush money payments made to the porn star Stormy Daniels in the dying days of the 2016 election campaign. Donald Trump was found guilty by a jury that he and his lawyers played a part in choosing. He was facing the possibility of 4 years in prison. Well, it's unusual that a judge gives a preview of what sentence they're minded to hand down, but given the extraordinary circumstances of this particular convict, it perhaps it is not that surprising that Judge Juan Merchan is saying that he won't sentence Donald Trump to prison time. He says he's minded to unconditionally discharge him. That means there will be no penalty for Donald Trump for breaking the law here, but he will still enter the Oval Office with that unwanted mantle of being the first president to be a convicted criminal should this sentencing take place on January the 10th, which is 10 days before Inauguration Day. Donald Trump's team are likely to appeal this sentencing date. He has always said that this case against him was a witch hunt, somehow instigated by the Biden administration and President Biden himself. To that end, Donald Trump's spokesperson, Stephen Chung, saying this evening, this lawless case should never have been brought and the Constitution demands that it be immediately dismissed. President Trump must be allowed to continue the presidential transition process and to execute the vital duties of the presidency unobstructed by the remains of this or any remnants of the witch hunts. I guess that sentence kind of reflects upon just how far these criminal cases against Donald Trump have come in such a short period of time. Just a year ago, Donald Trump was staring down the barrel of 4 criminal cases against him. Well, yes, he has been convicted in 1 case, but 2 cases, those federal cases around election subversion and classified documents, which were led by the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, they have been dismissed. There is still 1 outstanding case around election subversion in Georgia, but that's all but dead in the water because state criminal cases cannot be brought against a sitting president. So yes, Donald Trump may enter the White House on the 20th of January with his status as a convicted felon cemented, but he won't receive any penalty and certainly no prison time.
Still makes for a fascinating day next week, doesn't it? Martha, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's now move on to the cold snap bearing down this weekend. Weather warnings for ice and snow of up to 40 centimetres have been issued in some places, with temperatures plunging as low as -8. It's causing hazardous conditions. Police are investigating whether icy roads caused a crash which killed a baby boy. And mountain rescue teams were sent to a group of hill walkers in the Scottish Highlands. So an amber warning for snow and freezing rain covering most of Wales and central England, including the Midlands, is in place from 6 p.m. on Saturday to midday on Sunday. The second warning for snow covering most of northern England has been issued from 9 p.m. on Saturday to midnight on Sunday. Well, the Health Secretary said it was definitely a weekend to turn the heating on. But some pensioners losing their winter fuel allowance, there are concerns for some about whether they can afford to keep warm. Shingi Marurike reports now from Yorkshire.
It might look picture perfect in some places, but Britain is bracing itself for an Arctic blast, bringing with it the coldest temperatures of the winter so far and up to 40 centimetres of snow in some places. Whenever the country sees a cold snap, it's people like this group of pensioners in Bradford who will feel the deep chill most. They come to this church hall for some fun, food, and most importantly, a place to keep warm. For the first time since 1997, many pensioners are not receiving winter fuel payments. As the cold sets in, that will be an increasing concern. Pam is here twice a week. She lives on her own and says at this time of year, any help she can get is vital.
It's definitely more expensive. You watch more television, so the telly's switched on. The kettles get switched on more often.
If you had to guess, how much do you reckon you're saving coming here?
Oh, probably 30% of my costs.
People are already struggling in the bad weather, including a group of walkers who had to call out mountain rescue when they were stranded in the Cairngorms.
The nearest wheels to the aircraft will collapse first.
Yorkshire Air Ambulance are also preparing for remote rural call-outs and the challenges they bring.
The road crews can get most places. Unfortunately, when it becomes icy and snowy, particularly in places like North Yorkshire and hills and things like that, they can't always get the ambulance to the side of the patient. And that's where we come into a zone, because we can land at the side of the patient as long as the weather limitations are available to us. We can get to the side of the patient, put the patient into the aircraft and fly them, even if they're not critically injured.
As the temperature plummets, emergency services across the country, including the team here at Yorkshire Ambulance, are expecting increased demand in hazardous conditions.
Police are already investigating whether ice on the roads led to a fatal crash in Lincolnshire. A 7-month-old baby losing their life after a car lost control and hit a tree. In Sheffield, the City Council has one of the country's largest gritting networks, and they're expecting a busy weekend.
We're expecting 10 to 15 centimetres of snow on Saturday night, Sunday morning. So that is a lot. That is a lot. So that is going to be a challenge to get the gridders round through all the roads. Obviously they go round, but they can get blocked. If people start abandoning vehicles, then the whole thing grinds to a halt. Really, that's the biggest challenge.
As is often the case, snowfall will bring temporary joy for some, but the fear is the longer-term damage and disruption a weekend chill will bring. Shingi Marike, Sky News.
Well, as the cold snap grips, so too does the flu. New figures today showed the number of patients in hospital has quadrupled in the last month. That as the government reveals a review to reform social care, but not reporting until 2028, drawing criticism from some former NHS leaders who say it is too little too late. Let's take a look, though, at the flu situation. And new NHS data shows 5,074 people were in hospital in England with flu on the 29th of December. That is 4 times more than a month before, on the 29th of November. The average number of flu patients in hospital each day last week was 4,469, and that is 3.5 times higher than the average for the same week last year. Here's our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi.
Am I okay to do your observations? Yeah.
Sarah didn't think she'd live to see the new year. She has blood cancer and a compromised immune system. Around Christmas, she caught flu.
I was pretty sick. I was scared this time because I've had pneumonia before, but it's fine. And illnesses, but this was so different,
It sounds terrifying. Potentially, you thought you could have died.
At the time, yes, I did.
An earlier flu season than last year and a slow rollout of the vaccine has resulted in a perfect storm, leaving respiratory wards across the country struggling to cope.
Patients who have underlying respiratory disease, who I look after all the time, they've been more affected this year and have been more likely to end up in hospital to need our care because they require oxygen and the extra treatments that we can give them. But it's also affected people that are older that don't have underlying respiratory disease. And while those patients sometimes do end up in hospital, there have been more of them this year.
The impact of the flu surge is being felt all over the hospital, including here in the emergency department, where every bed and every bay is taken. The delayed discharge of medically fit patients adds to the pressure. There were nearly 11,000 stuck in hospitals over Christmas.
This is our discharge round. It allows us to move patients here who are getting ready to go home or ready to go home that day. It frees beds up on our acute wards for patients who are awaiting admission normally from the emergency department.
That's still a big problem, isn't it, delayed discharge?
Yeah, absolutely. We've often got people who are ready to either go home or be cared for in another setting and don't need to be in the acute hospital anymore. So having an area where we can start to move those patients through on the next phase of their journey has been really helpful for us.
Yeah. The government has announced an independent cross-party commission to try and modernise the social care sector.
The winter crisis we see in the NHS is exactly why we need to grasp the nettle of the big long-term reforms to social care that's needed, because as well as our 10-year plan for the NHS and all the reform we're doing there, we also need to reform our social care.
But findings from previous commissions haven't been acted on, and there are concerns a new report will mean comprehensive reform won't start before the next general election. You can't fix the NHS without fixing social care. And what this winter crisis has shown yet again is if there's a surge in cases or infections, then there simply isn't enough capacity in the system to deal with it. That's why the government is being urged to do something about social care sooner rather than later. NHS England has warned that the surge in flu cases hasn't yet peaked, and this weekend's extremely cold weather could mean the worst is yet to come. Ashish Joshi at the Kingsmill Hospital in Mansfield.
The leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, has said that the founder of the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson, isn't welcome in his party. It follows high-profile support for Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, from Elon Musk. Mr Farage says he welcomes Mr Musk's interventions, but insists there is no room for Tommy Robinson in Reform UK.
Oh, having him as a supporter is very helpful to our cause. I mean, goodness me. I mean, he's an absolute hero figure, particularly to young people in this country. So, yes, he's very helpful indeed. Now, look, everyone says, well, what about his comments on Tommy Robinson? Look, my position is perfectly clear on that. I never wanted Tommy Robinson to join UKIP. I don't want him to join Reform UK, and he won't be.
Well, our political correspondent Amanda Acast joins me now. So Elon Musk supporting Tommy Robinson and some in Reform UK seeming to back him. Is this quite a dilemma for Nigel Farage?
Yes, it certainly is. Elon Musk has been increasingly outspoken in his support of Reform UK, but it really has becoming a bit of a double-edged sword for Nigel Farage. Of course, he welcomes the fact that the world's richest man has been going online onto X, the social media platform he owns, of course, bashing the UK government under Sir Keir Starmer, urging his followers to vote for Reform UK. There's talk as well of a multi-million-pound possible donation from him. But where Musk has really opened this huge can of worms is over his backing for Tommy Robinson, arguing that he should be freed from prison. Now, Robinson was jailed for contempt of court for repeating false allegations about a Syrian refugee. And Nigel Farage has made a big part of his career of really distancing himself and the parties he leads from Tommy Robinson, who was the co-founder of the English Defence League, and also from the more extreme right-wing ideology that he really represents. And tonight, those comments we heard there are really him trying to say, well, Reform UK, we want it to be a mainstream political party. There is no place here for Tommy Robinson. But that position is rather uncomfortable with some in his party, as you say. Tonight, there's been a big conference in Leicester for Reform UK, and they're really trying to celebrate the fact that they've attracted so many more members. They say they've now got the second highest number of members of any political party in the country. But many of their speakers were interrupted by hecklers shouting in support of Tommy Robinson. Lee Anderson, the former Tory MP, actually stopped and told them to shut up. So that's looking increasingly uncomfortable for the party. And also, the more that Musk repeats his backing for Robinson, the harder it will be in future for Nigel Farage to accept any donation from him.
Amanda, live for us there in Westminster. Thank you. Well, let's turn now to the aftermath of the attack in New Orleans, in which 14 people were killed after a man drove a truck into revellers on New Year's Day. Yesterday, Sky News spoke to the brother of one of the victims. Today, we heard from the brother of the man responsible, Shamsuddin Jabbar. It comes as the authorities in the city face scrutiny over whether they did enough to prevent the attack. President Biden today spoke to the families of victims and will visit New Orleans on Monday. Our US correspondent James Matthews has more.
They're finding their rhythm in New Orleans. It'll take a while. This is Bourbon Street 2 days on. From the sights and sounds they won't forget.
I think it's very sad and it's emotional.
I was heartbroken. A few of my friends had got caught up in it.
These are the victims of the New Year terror attack that killed 14 people. On Bourbon Street, more than 30 were injured, survivors like Jeremy Sensky.
I heard a massive noise and I thought that something fell. And I turned around, and when I turned around, that's pretty much all that I remember until I was on the ground. And I came back, and there was this people screaming.
The FBI have issued photos of the attacker walking the streets before he drove his car into the crowd, and of one of his homemade bombs inside a cooler, a device that didn't go off.
This wasn't the man I knew.
The family of Shamsuddin Jabbar has taken to television to convey their thoughts to his victims.
Our hearts and prayers and thoughts go out to those families, the victims of those families, and those who were there to witness it.
Thousands had congregated on Bourbon Street to bring in the new year.
We were absolutely shocked.
Mike Kelly and Florence Moss had travelled from the UK.
How lucky were we? We thought how lucky we were that because we could have been on the street at that time.
Yeah, we were just basically here an hour before it type thing. So, but yeah, it was very lucky and very sad.
Lots of people and lots of kids out celebrating. We thought how sad because it was such a young people's place at that time of night, and they were all partying and celebrating New Year.
Yeah. Security at the end of Bourbon Street is a big part of the story here. 5 years ago, an assessment was done of measures in place. It raised concerns about street bollards that didn't appear to work and concluded this street was vulnerable to vehicular ramming. I asked the New Orleans police chief about security in place. Madam, do you acknowledge that you let the victims down by not having an appropriate security plan?
Oh, that's not the correct. That's not correct. We would disagree with that. We had a
plan that allowed an attacker to drive into a crowd.
And I take exception to that, and I do not agree with that.
It has to be a failure.
We do know that people have lost their lives. But if you're experienced with terrorism, you would not be asking that question.
Well, with respect, experience of terrorism surely requires appropriate security protection. It is a grim picture at the heart of New Orleans' French Quarter. They'll celebrate again in Bourbon Street, only now where there's party, there's prayer. James Matthews, Sky News, in New Orleans.
It's the dawn of a new year, but for people in Gaza, things are much the same. Israel has carried out strikes over the last week on what it says are Hamas targets. But hopes of a ceasefire have not disappeared entirely, with Hamas saying that indirect negotiations about a pause in fighting would resume from today in Qatar. Meanwhile, there are concerns about the fate of a Palestinian doctor who was detained by the Israeli military. A warning that this report from our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle contains content some may find distressing.
Israel has been carrying out heavy strikes on Gaza over the last few days. This was the aftermath of one attack in Khan Yunis. The IDF claims it's hit 40 Hamas command centres in the last 24 hours. People in Gaza say it's been some of the heaviest bombing in weeks. Dozens have reportedly been killed and many wounded.
We were sleeping. Everyone was taking shelter in their tents from the cold, and suddenly we found the world turning upside down. Why and for what? They say that the places in Khan Yunis are safe, that the places in Muasi are safe. They claim that they are safe, but there is no safety except with God. Children, women, men, all of them are cut up.
There is growing concern about the fate and health of Dr. Hossam Abu Safia, the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital. In recent months, he became a well-known face and voice from inside northern Gaza's embattled medical facilities. Everything we ever built, they burnt to the ground. They set our hearts on fire. They killed my son. Dr. Hossam was last seen walking towards an Israeli tank through the ruins of northern Gaza at the end of December. A released Palestinian prisoner has claimed that Dr. Hossam was being held in the next-door cell as him at the State Amman prison in Israel, a notorious facility which was recently accused of abusing prisoners. He arrived tonight from Kamal Adwan Hospital, the man says. I heard them calling his name during morning roll call. They do a roll call in the morning and I heard them shouting his name. The guys who got out said they saw them bringing Dr. Hossam there. The IDF has confirmed to Sky News that he is being detained and investigated for links to Hamas. But no evidence has been provided so far, and the IDF won't reveal where he is being held.
We need to recall that he was already detained in December 2023. And at the time, the IDF mentioned absolutely no link with Hamas. We are extremely worried about the detention of Dr. Hossam, and we ask for his lawyer to have access to him. We ask for his family to have access to him. And indeed, we ask for his release.
The United Nations has said that Gaza's entire health system is now on the brink of collapse. The morgues are overflowing. And so the dead, many of them children, are now laid outside. After almost 15 months of war, the first days of the new year in Gaza show no sign of a let-up in the fighting. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
The father of Sarah Sharif has been attacked in Belmarsh prison. Irfan Sharif was jailed last month for the murder of 10-year-old Sarah. He's understood to have suffered slashes to his face and body, requiring stitches. He received local care inside prison. In Washington, members of the new Congress have been sworn in and have re-elected Republican Mike Johnson as Speaker. He has the support of President-elect Donald Trump and was successful in the first ballot despite opposition from some Republicans. Las Vegas police say the man who died in a Cybertruck explosion left a note claiming it was not a terrorist attack, but a stunt to serve as a wake-up call for various issues. The FBI also said the suspect, Matthew Leivelsberger, acted alone and probably suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder following his service in Afghanistan.
He says, fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves. He goes on to explain a variety of other grievances and issues, some political, some personal. This was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives? Why did I personally do it now? I need to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took.
The American Olympic sprinter Fred Kerley has been charged with battery and disorderly conduct after being tasered by police during an arrest in Miami. Police say he approached officers involved in an active investigation concerned about his vehicle, which was parked nearby, and became increasingly aggressive. The American athlete won bronze in the men's 100 metres at the Paris Olympics and is a former world champion. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers. In the press preview tonight, we're joined by the former Conservative Special Advisor, Anita Boateng, and the Daily Mirror columnist, Susie Boniface. Welcome and New Year to both of you. Great to see you. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front page of The Times. Its headline, Starmer in Trump's sights. Explain more about that in just a moment.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Is it a drone?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. In the next half hour then, we'll see what's making the headlines with the former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and the Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface. Welcome and great to see both of you. So to the front pages, as ever, let's kick off with The Times, which says Sir Keir Starmer's focus on the NHS and domestic issues are at risk due to attacks from Donald Trump and his backer Elon Musk. The Daily Mail reports that former detective Maggie Oliver has claimed Keir Starmer bears responsibility for failures to address grooming gangs. The Eye says a new poll suggests Labour could lose more than 100 seats to Reform due to voter concerns about immigration and the NHS crisis. The Telegraph says the NHS is prioritising asylum seekers over the general public despite long waiting times. The Express reports on campaigners criticising Labour's planned social care reforms. Daily Mirror reports that 17-year-old dart sensation Luke Littler expected to rake in £50 million over his career. Well, the Financial Times reports that City Minister Tulip Siddiq received a central London flat in 2004 from a developer linked to the recently ousted Bangladeshi Prime Minister. The Star reports on the Health Secretary's advice for people to turn on their heating during the cold snap, despite the government's cuts to the winter fuel allowance. A reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages for yourself while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to Anita and Susie. Welcome to both of you. Interesting set of papers, has to be said, for Saturday. But let's start with the Times. This is Starmer, who's going to talk about the NHS, we're told, on Monday, being derailed by Donald Trump and Elon Musk about windmills and North Sea oil. Anyway, Anita, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much a sign of things to come. And for the next 4 years, I think we're going to be saying a lot that Starmer's agenda has been derailed by something happening over in the US. So, yes, this is very much the fact that there have been effectively attacks, it's hard to describe them in any other way, by Donald Trump and his billionaire backer, the Elon Musk, who has made a kind of quite a big thing, I think, over the past year, really, of attacking Keir Starmer, and certainly since he became the Prime Minister. So, President-elect Trump says that the government has made a big mistake by increasing the windfall tax, which is, the tax on North Sea oil and gas, people kind of getting the oil out of the ground after an American company said that actually they are going to end its production probably as a result of the level of taxation that's being granted. And, you're also seeing the fact that there was this sort of opening up the North Sea, getting rid of the windmills, which is a big bugbear of Donald Trump's. And I'm not sure if you were following the case that took place over his golf course, where effectively he appealed to the UK Supreme Court saying, gosh, you absolutely cannot allow these wind farms to be anywhere near my golf course. And he lost. So you can imagine there's a big kind of personal vendetta being meted out by Donald Trump right now, which Starmer will not be delighted to have to deal with.
Yes, I mean, that is the lead for the inside pages, isn't it? Trump takes the PM into the windmills of his mind. I mean, there used to be a thing that you don't interfere in another nation's politics. This is the president-elect and somebody who's going to be in his government should all go according to plan. But, this is election interference in some regard and sort of post-election interference, isn't it? So what... Is it allowable? Should it be frowned upon? And what does Starmer do about it?
But I'm old enough to remember when Theresa May was Prime Minister, which was the last time Donald Trump was President, and he kept derailing her Brexit deal every 5 minutes, which had massive constitutional implications, not only for Britain at the time, but for subsequent Prime Ministers trying to deal with Brexit deals, and goodness knows what else. And he knows nothing at all about Brexit, but apparently we all had to listen to him anyway.
And also he predicted that it was going to go that way, remember, his absolute rock-solid belief.
So, I mean, it's partly because of Trump is the kind of president he is. There's a huge gravitational weight to him as far as the media is concerned. It's It's a car crash, and it's interesting to watch it. And you don't know if somehow he might manage something brilliant by being disruptive, by accident almost, or if it's all going to go horribly wrong. But everyone wants to watch it, so the media therefore focus on it. So therefore the politicians have to respond to it. So Keir Starmer finds himself in a situation where we have a North London barrister, a KC, a very successful, rich, wealthy, clever, well-educated man, is having to have phone calls with someone who makes Joe Biden look like maybe he was slightly less than senile. And it's...
showing your politics
What we've got here is that actually we've now got the oldest US president when he is inaugurated. And he is definitely making less sense than he ever used to, if he ever made sense the first time. And we've now got, details of phone calls between him and Starmer, which happened before Christmas, now being leaked out.
A leaked call details.
And saying that, he spent this call, at the time it was briefed out as, they both, reissued their support for Dumpty Dum.
Close historic
it now
relations.
turns out, he said, he moaned about Prince William's beard, said it was very modern. He complained about windmills rather than wind farms, because he's got this personal bugbear about his Scottish golf course. And then he praised how pretty his wife, Keir Starmer's wife is, and said, he's your best asset. I mean, in terms of talking to the leader of the free world and trying to, get onto track with a thing that we're going to discuss now, we need to talk about AUKUS, and we need to talk about NATO, we need to talk about Ukraine, and you just got someone going, bleh. I feel for Keir Starmer.
I mean, it's all truly fascinating, but the context, too, is the intervention of Elon Musk via X, via, what used to be called Twitter, including, as we read down the bottom of the Times article, Musk's jibes about Starmer and tyrannical police state of Britain, including about Tommy Robinson, and the Asian grooming gangs, which takes us to the Daily Mail. Starmer guilty as anyone over grooming gangs. This is the former detective who calls for an Oldham inquiry as pressure for that grows. So the sort of the conundrum of all of this fits together, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And I think, Susie, you talked about it being a car crash. This is a multi-way, multi-car, pile-up in terms of the levels of political problems that are going to be created by for Keir Starmer, not just in the kind of material sense, but in terms of driving that agenda. So now we're talking about grooming gangs all over again and potentially kind of Keir Starmer's role. So the Mail has a whistleblower, Maggie Oliver, who kind of helped expose some of this failure in Rochdale in particular, saying that she has no faith in the Prime Minister to investigate this. You also had the kind of Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, talking about there need to be an inquiry. And you can see how the government will get pulled off course at various moments by these political attacks, which are coming from effectively Elon Musk, who might potentially, you might argue, be the second most powerful person in the world. And that is an extraordinary person to have in your sight, because you could argue that Donald Trump is perhaps as unfocused as ever and concerned with his little issues. But Elon Musk seems to have much more of a laser focus on backing reform and on unnerving, at the very least, perhaps unseating Keir Starmer. And that would be something to worry about. And it seems to me, most importantly, that the Starmer team have not come up with a way of dealing with that problem, because it's going to persist.
Well, and Nigel Farage tonight saying Kemi Badenoch's seat is in his sights, they're coming for them effectively. But he's left with the problem of his backer, Elon Musk, supporting Tommy Robinson and the bid to get him free. So it's complicated for Nigel Farage as well, isn't it? The heart and soul of the right wing of politics.
British politics has got so much, has so much sort of magnetism with American politics that it does have to respond, and they do sort of feed off each other. But the fact is that people who are now influencing American politics make no actual sense. The stuff Elon Musk says is factually wrong. It can be proven as wrong. Tommy Robinson is a serial criminal offender with more than one crime under his belt. There's very good reasons that he's in jail, and that's exactly where he should be, and I hope he's watching us tonight. But, when it comes to talking about rape gangs, what Keir Starmer did or didn't do, he did launch the first prosecution into the rape gangs, and he also kind of started this sort of conspiracy theory, in a way, by saying, well, look, we didn't prosecute when we should have done. And there was a problem because of the ethnicity of some of the offenders, that was perhaps why we didn't do it. So he kind of acknowledged that years ago, a decade ago. And that's kind of led to some of this conspiracy theory that's still going on. But, what's really interesting is that, according to the latest police figures, grooming, group-based, I should say, sex attacks and sexual abuse accounts for about 3.7% of criminal behaviour and abuse on children. 96.3% is not gang-based. It's not group-based. And most of those things which are in groups, anyway, are to do with churches, schools, clubs, that kind of thing.
But
grooming
it's
is part
trigger
of it.
issues, isn't
but
it?
If you want to have an inquiry into the massive problem with child sexual abuse in this country, the fact there are hundreds of thousands of children at risk of it, that in every class in this country, in every school, there are children being sexually abused, most likely by family members and most likely at home, then that is the 96%, not the 3%.
So if you sort of build this as issues landing on Sir Keir Starmer's desk post-New Year, you've got how to deal with America, this grooming gangs bubbling issue. Also, the Daily Express, the social care reforms which had been promised have been slightly pushed into the long grass, haven't they? That's the sort of sensation for people today.
I mean, not slightly. I think they've been heavily lobbed into the long grass, but I'm not convinced it's been done very successfully. I think someone's got a slightly dodgy left foot, because the reality of the situation is that there is no solution to the social care problem that doesn't involve making painful political choices and deciding who should pay. And ultimately, a lot of the people that will pay will be a particular group of voters that will either respond to the Labour or the Conservatives. The idea that this is ever going to be politically neutral, or even that it's going to be less politically painful if the government doesn't have courage and make a choice at a moment where it has political leverage, 4 years for people to get over it, and for perhaps to see some positive impacts on local government, for instance, it's all for the birds. So this has been a real mess for the government that's going to come back to bite.
And just very quickly, biting now, we know people were left in hospital over Christmas because there weren't social care places to look after people, just as we see flu surging in this country right now.
Exactly. And I mean, we've had 25 years of social care discussions and commissions and inquiries and reports. The NHS was formed after a 3-year, Attlee came in 45. It was 3 years later the NHS was appeared. So you could say that Wes Streeting's 3-year thing is maybe that is, par for the course. But seeing as we've had 25 years, and like Anita said, I completely agree with her, the political lunacy of leaving this till almost the next election.
2028.
The year before the next election is due, when it cannot possibly have started, it cannot possibly have got through the teething problems that would be inevitable with a massive change like that. And then going into an election where your opponents can argue with you as to whether or not you've done it properly is insane. They should be going into that election 3 years after having set up a social care system. They should have done it on day one. They should have said, we're taking you into fuel payments, we're going to spend it on this. It'll be OK. And then by the time the election came round, the Tories would have to argue, well, you should let Granny die.
Very interesting. Lots more to pack in to our next part of our programme. Thank you for now, including weather warnings across parts of the UK ahead of a weekend of snow and freezing rain. That and plenty more in just a moment.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. It takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel just don't, Don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it, let me see it. This is brilliant, brilliant.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world, the likes of Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Sir Elton John. We try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Anita Boateng and Susie Boniface. Welcome back to both of you. Let's talk weather, shall we, with the weather warnings this weekend. A fantastic photograph in the Daily Telegraph. Here comes the snow. Snowfall around Stonehenge, they said, in Wiltshire, marking the beginning of the white weekend in Britain. But, Susie, the Daily Star, hitting on the political point here, which is that the Health Secretary has said to people, urged people, now is the time to put your heating on. As everybody points out, yes, but what about those people for whom you took away winter fuel payments?
Exactly. It's the kind of thing that keeps coming back and biting them on the bum every time they say anything. Now, to be fair to Wes, he's giving a series of interviews about the social care reforms. He's asked in there about the weather. He's asked in there about winter fuel payments. He's asked in there about flu crisis that's going through the NHS at the moment. And he says the sensible thing for any government minister, which is, well, put your heating on, keep yourself warm, look after yourself. You don't want anyone to go to hospital, they don't have to. And they managed to make something like this out of it. It's a dumb thing to have said. But, you know, one of the problems that we've had with this flu crisis, and he is Health Secretary now, is that the messaging about flu vaccinations has not been good enough. There are loads of people who are valid for it who have not got it, older people and children at school. And there are people who are my age who can get it if you go and pay 15, 20 quid at the pharmacy. No one knows, no one sees the report. Unless you happen to be in the pharmacist and you're so bored you're reading the wall, you don't know that those vaccinations are available. There's been no messaging, no public health support at all. And it comes down to the fact that when the Health Secretary is caught out in an interview, he says something and suddenly someone goes, oh, am I supposed to turn heating? He should be saying, go and get vaccinated. Go and get vaccinated next year if you don't do it this year. And he's not. He's saying just the wrong thing in the wrong way. And I don't know if it's being clumsy or left-footed or being caught out by the interviewer, but it's just the messaging is so bad with this guy.
And, you know, flu vaccine came out late, flu came early, caused part of the problem. Very quickly, nice little learner, Daily Mirror, Luke Littler, used the force, Luke. It says, anyway, £50 million they suggest he might earn over his career after his fantastic win earlier this year.
Yes, and he's already made £3 million in prizes and deals. So, I mean, all power to him. I think to have achieved something so enormous when you're 17 is very impressive. And I know nothing about darts, but I might start learning something.
Look, even my 85-year-old mum said she was staying up to watch last night.
Oh,
so
wow.
There you go. So, you know, it's tickled some people. But
Absolutely,
only 17 years old, to show such composure, you know, at such a young age, with the world watching you, you know, extraordinary thing to behold.
Yeah, and he's obviously put a lot of years into it. He's got a natural skill, and one of the great things about it is you see someone who's just good at one particular thing and it manages to blossom and then can exploit it, and that's wonderful. I do worry having that much success and that much money at 17, where it's going to take him. I hope he's got the right advisors around him and the right family support.
There are worse situations to be in, and sales of dartboards are going through the roof, apparently. The Littler effect will continue. There we go. Hoisting aloft the Sid Waddell Trophy to great delight to the Ali Pali crowd, as you can see there. Quite a show, isn't it? Both of you, thank you very much indeed. See you next time. Good to see you, both of you, Anita and Susie. Let's take a look at that all-important weather, though, shall we now? Mix of snow, rain and freezing rain will spread north this weekend, bringing icy stretches and disruption. Yellow and amber weather warnings have been issued for snow and ice. Parts of Ireland and northern England can expect the heaviest snow, with up to 40 centimetres possible on the Pennines and the Wicklow Mountains. Other areas of England and Wales will be at risk of heavy snow too, along with freezing rain and ice before milder air moves into the south. The weekend then will start mostly fine, if frosty. There'll be a few wintry showers around first of all. Expect some icy stretches and freezing fog. Plenty of morning sunshine, albeit hazy in the south. Fog will linger in a few spots. Exposed coastal areas in the northwest will keep the risk of showers. It'll be cold again. And then the afternoon will see the wind and the rain moving into the southwest, with snow developing inland. That snow pushing northeastwards overnight. Sunday will bring snow, rain and freezing rain. Well, Sky News at 11 is next. Teenage sensation Luke Littler becomes the youngest ever person to win the World Darts Championship. That and the rest of the day's news coming up shortly.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.